Okay. Are you ready for roll call? Yep. Good afternoon. Director Jackman.
Hello, I am here.
Director Kearney.
I'm here.
Director Vandenberg.
He is not here today.
Director Watson.
Present.
Director Graham. Present. Director Newell. Volunteer. Director Cunningham.
Present. Good afternoon.
Director Football.
Present and good afternoon.
Director Davidoff.
Present, thank you.
Director Pembroke.
Present.
Director Weatherhead.
Can you hear us, Director Weatherhead?
Oh, can you not hear me? Hold on.
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
Thank you. Director May. Present. And Director Hewitt.
I am present. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Shelley. We currently don't have a chair. Director Vandenberg is traveling to Alberta, so I will call for nominations for an acting chair for this meeting.
Director Paul Buff would like to nominate former Chair Director Main.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other nominations? Okay.
Do it 3 times.
Do I have to do it for this? Okay.
Yes.
Any other nominations for acting chair? And last call for nominations for acting chair.
You're good now. You did it 3.
So, yeah.
And does Director Main accept it?
Yes. Bring that chair over.
Oh yeah, good idea.
The chair. I guess the reader, it's the one amended. It's not amended. Okay.
You can just refer that to the board. We do speak on the agenda, so just
It's already going to come over.
so you can just adopt the agenda as is, and when you get to that item, just say it's referred to the board.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Calling the meeting is already called to order.
Director May, would you like me to manage chat?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. So, Hennigra, seconded by Director Jackman. Any discussion? Hearing none. I'll call the question. Any opposed to the agenda? Seeing none, it is carried. We have received the minutes of the April 15th, 2025 CSLAC meeting. That brings us to item 6. We have a delegation, Chelsea Jones from Lardo Valley Opportunity Links Society, to present the Grid Stability Pilot Project. Welcome.
I'll stand up here. Does that work for the?
Your volume goes to the owl.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm Chelsea Jones from Lardo Valley Link. I live up in Argenta. And I'm really happy to be here. So we can go to the next slide. Sorry, this fallen. Sorry, I'm just doing this. Yeah, so Links, Lardo Valley Links is a nonprofit working in the Lardo Valley for area residents' resiliency and quality of life in the Lardo Valley. So we're able to do a lot of different projects, and we're really happy to do this pilot project, which came out of the growing frequency and length of power outages in the Lardo Valley, which we were finding to actually threaten the health and safety and food security of our residents. So it became a pretty high priority, especially in 2019 when we started having community meetings and discussions on how we could improve the resilience. And from that, we did a study, or commissioned a study with Rocky Point Engineering and PBX Engineering that did a Lardo Valley Power Assessment Report. And then after community meeting, reviewing and all that, and so that report prepared recommendations for advocacy with BC Hydro, and we looked at options for like microgrid systems and household resiliency. And from that, we did an in-house survey for community members, what their needs are and what their vulnerabilities were. And from that, then we did a roundtable discussion with like grid specialists. So we had all the electricians that we knew in the area, and people with off-grid systems and stuff, and developed this project from that. And then we went through the grant proposal process, which Paris, Marshall Smith, and Amy Watson, Director Amy Watson, helped us develop this pilot project from. The next slide. So what it ended up being was we gave up to $1,000 rebates for households and businesses to support their backup system. We did encourage fossil fuel-free options where possible. At first, we were trying to say it could only be fossil fuel-free options, but we found that to be too big a barrier for some of the ones. So we opened that up. And did home assessments at first, consultations with licensed electricians, clear disclaimers to manage expectations, and then the successful applicants were eventually responsible for selecting the system that best met their needs. So it was a collaboration between the homeowners and businesses and the program. Next slide. So who could apply? A landowner or a renter that had their landowner's permission, and the system we decided should remain with the property because of the goals of having resilience in the Lardo Valley. So keeping that system within the area or being reimbursed back to Links if people were moving and wanted to take their system with them. We prioritized the low-income houses and people who were on the main power grid that was having the vulnerabilities, so BC Hydro residents. We did offer rebates to people that were off-grid already and needed to improve their system, but it wasn't a priority. Medically vulnerable residents, seniors, families with young children, and then applicants in the application process would describe their needs, and then we were able to help with the recommendations. Next slide. So the core base of this was the community-led working group. So we, from the roundtable, invited whoever could step forward into a more active role, and we paid for the working group time, $150 an hour. So it was competitive, and we were able to get through that some licensed electricians on the working group, which we found to be essential for providing the feedback to applicants. And then we had 2 Links board members who had expertise in this field as well. And yeah, just reiterating the importance of having ticketed electricians working in the field were essential for developing the project. Through the working group, we developed the application forms, the supplies list, the disclaimers. And then after that, the working group were involved basically in selecting applicants that were successful and providing any clarity and questions and answers for the applicants and the project coordinator as we went along. Next slide. So we shared it through originally Facebook community groups on social media. We have a weekly newsletter, so we put it out through there and on our physical message boards for people who aren't online. And we did have some applicants that were completely off computers, and so handled that through phone and supporting them in the application process. So the applicants would express their interest, and then they get their project package. And then we reviewed the applicants, obviously, and selected them or came back with questions until we were clear on what the ideas was. And then after that, we provided personalized recommendations, an approved supply list, care and guidelines for caring for the infrastructure that people were getting, and then a rebate agreement. Then people would submit their receipts and a photo of the system in situ, and then they would get the rebate for the most part. Next slide. So these are the posters we had 3 phases. So we were kind of trying to do different things to get information. It was a little bit of a slow burn to start, and people were kind of, but is this where the strings attached? Is too good to be true? So the first intake was a little bit slow. We didn't actually have as many applicants as we had rebates to give, and we were kind of like, oh, well, maybe people have gotten their own systems. And then as it kind of grew in steam, and even now we're having people come. So it's definitely been building and been good to do in phases to build that community trust. Next slide. So our timeline, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I don't want to take too long, but we would have our intake. So we started in October 2023, and we're actually just completing our last phase. So it's been rolling out slowly over time. Next slide. And so, yeah, this is just a breakdown of how that process exactly went. And all the different spokes, from expression of interest to sending the feedback form and closing the file. Next slide. And our recommendations. So at first we did home assessments, we hired home assessors to go into people's homes and talk to them specifically. And then in phase 2, we decided, and I'll talk a bit more about the logic behind switching it to, we did just a more robust application package in our phase 2 and found that worked well. And then an approved supply list, again, encouraging fossil fuel options and managing expectations for what $1,000 can buy in a backup. So we're talking essential needs, not heating or cover your hot water tank and things like that. And then luckily in 2023, we acquired some generators that are available for rent. And this is separate from the grid stability project, but we found this to be really great, encouraging people to do like a battery bank for their communications. And then if they need a freezer, if the power outage is 2 or 3 days long, and they need a generator to recharge their freezers, and they can use the loan project, the generator loan program that we have. So for our home assessments, at first we were thinking we need to do home assessments and really be on the ground with people in their homes. The visits took 2 to 2.5 hours each, and coordination was, complicated with the applicants and stuff. It was pretty time consuming and was taking a good chunk of the budget. And for the most part, everyone that we saw were pretty savvy and knew what they needed. They just needed the support to get what they needed. So in the end, in phase 2, we decided, okay, what are the main questions we need to make an informed decision on approving applicants, and we revised the application package to do that. And then offered if people had questions, or we got the application back and our electricians were kind of like, oh, like this seems a little iffy, we need more information, then we would recommend a 2-hour consultation with an electrician, and we covered that. And actually only 2 people for all the applicants needed that. And so we found that worked well to just use the application form and not do the home assessment. Okay, next slide. So in terms of accessibility, there were a few individuals who couldn't do the rebate option, and so we set up accounts at 2 local retailers. And if people were pre-approved, then you could call in and say so-and-so is has been approved for up to $1,000 towards battery bank or a generator. And again, only 2 people use this, but it was important for us to make sure there weren't barriers to access, even though it did require a fair bit of extra coordination. And then, yeah, next slide. We wanted to make sure safety and compliance measures, especially the electricians having on the working group website for making sure all this was covered, because there can be issues if people are going to tie into their main accounts and things like that. So keeping that clear in all of our communications consistent to make sure that people were maintaining business code, building codes and regulations, and so when we had our feedback form, and we met as a group after each phase to review it with the working group, the coordinator, the home assessors in the first phase. And then we were able to kind of evolve each phase. We had really good feedback. Consistently only good feedback from applicants. Okay. So I've included this so you guys would have the hard numbers. And we have that in the form, but in the next slide, which you can just go to right away visually, you can see. So this was our budgeted expenses. So the rebates were in the gray, home assessments, the pink, working group, blue, project coordination, and then admin for links, so partner program. And then in the end, because we were able to move away from the home assessments, we were able to offer a lot more rebates. The working group took less time after the project launch than we expected. And so again, we just funneled all the extra funds into offering more rebates and ended up offering 39 rebates in total. Okay, next slide. So this was our grant. It was completely grant funded, mainly through RDCK Area D Community Development Funds with support of Director Watson. And then the CSLAC contribution, which we gratefully received. And then another RDCK Community Development Grant through Area D in 2024 to offer a few more rebates as we were getting feedback from the community that there was the demand. On the next slide. So what did we fund? So first phase, in the first column, it was more generators and then in the second phase, we had more solar generators and battery backups. We had 1 person purchase a propane appliance for their cooking, and then 1 electrical panel in each phase tie-in for their well pumps. And you can see a lot of the fossil fuel appliance. So that's the cooking and the generators, and the other ones were mainly battery banks for communication. Next slide. So this is the same thing in a pie chart. So we can attach this one. What were the needs? This was consistent with the survey that we conducted. So the main thing was communications. We don't have cell coverage up the lakes, and the phone lines through TELUS have very limited backup power, so they'll go down usually in some communities 2 hours, as early as 2 hours, and in some 1 day. And so that was a high need for people. Food preservation, that's fridges and freezers. Cooking was less needed. Lighting is a big one, and then water supply for well pumps were the main things. Other things, small amount medical devices like CPAP, things like that need quite a bit of power when the power's out. Lighting, not very much for heating. Most people are on wood heat. The lake. So before and after the program, people had mostly no backup power. Some people had some things covered, but a need for like communications if they had a generator or vice versa. And after that, everyone had power after. So we can move on to the next slide. the same thing here is just showing, before people would have basically zero resilience in the power outage, and then after within a 3 days, for the most part. So how are the hours, broken down? Mainly the project coordinator, the back and forth with the applicants and answering their questions and stuff like that. That was the main majority. The home assessors were in phase 1, and then the consulting group again went day down in the second phase, and project coordinator as we learned and streamlined the process. Next slide, please. So what did we learn? We do think that it can be replicated in other communities facing frequent power outages. The battery bank inverter systems and small generators budget-wise fit within the 1,000. Most people maybe were able to be slightly under a couple $100 over, but fit within that $1,000 benchmark. So we thought that was a good amount. And the success of the program having at least 1 or 2 electricians on the panel was really important. And then the project coordinator needed the clear communication. Obviously, it's a lot of communications back and forth with the applicants. And the community-led process, which built trust and participation, as I said, it's kind of grown over time as people are hearing word of mouth through their neighbors is really the main way that it seems to be spreading. Okay, next slide. So accessibility, creating the retailer accounts, which I already mentioned, having those extra coordinator hours to work with people who needed extra support. Some people who aren't on emails, so then they need to mail in their receipts, get mailed back their forms and things like that. So we had that, and then phone and in-person help available. Next slide. And then the outreach. So allowing time for word of mouth advertising. So in any community, I think having a phased approach where it's like a slow rollout so people can understand what it is from their neighbors and in the community. And then, and what we're finding actually in this final intake is we're seeing a lot more of those vulnerable residents that maybe didn't have internet access or have medical devices much higher in this last intake, which was surprising and interesting. So that they seems like benefited from hearing from their neighbors and seeing their working for others before they're feeling comfortable to engage. Okay, next slide. Make sure I'm good for time. Okay, so there we go. A deeply sincere thank you to Director Watson, who really spearheaded this project with us. So that was huge for our community in Paris. Mark Smith, also huge support in developing the grant and the project. And it did make a really meaningful difference for community members, really tangible, positive impacts in the community. So, yeah, we think it's a realistic and doable and scalable project for any areas that have that vulnerability as well. So, any questions?
I have a list. Director Popoff, Davidoff, and Jackman.
I was on the list as well.
Okay. Popoff, Watson, Davidoff, and Jackman. So, Walter, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Great project. I'm glad to hear it's come down to a real good solution for the residents in Director Watson's area. And thanks to Director Watson for majority of the contributions for the funding of this project. And it appears that this project can be duplicated or replicated in other areas. And my concern is I'm looking at the Spokane Valley, where there are numerous outages, maybe not as prolonged as the ones up in the Lardo Valley and that area, but there are numerous outages. So the question that I would have is, has Hydro done a lot of the work with clearing all, it's extreme events that cause the outage. And slides or whatever, they're uncontrollable. We can't control the slides. But the brushing along the lines, like when I travel throughout the area, I always look at the telephone lines because that's where I come from. That was my past occupation. And I see a lot of trees overhanging the power lines, and they're left. And I'm not too sure whose responsibility it is to clear them. Is it the power company's responsibility, the telephone company's responsibility, or the Ministry of Highways? Has that been looked at?
Right, so in the early phases of consultation, like in the 2019, 2021 phase, we were doing a lot of advocacy with BC Hydro, and they did a big project for clearing the lines of trees and overhangs, and we noticed that as well. In fact, I was just in a neighborhood emergency planning meeting in Johnson's Landing, and they're going like, this is just like a community thing. We need to go and like deal with these trees. And I've been back and forth with BC Hydro. Also, there was a fire started with a line or a tree on the line. And so it's super high concern. And as far as I know, it's BC Hydro, when there's trees on the lines are hanging over, and they're limited in what they can do. We had someone come up and do a tree assessment, and they took down one, and community members are left going like, what about that one? I know they communicated to us that they're expecting more issues with that, with the drought conditions that there have been in the Hamel area, root rot and the fir issues. So yeah, it's a really high concern, and all the more need for people to be resilient on their own and not relying on that, because they're expecting longer and more prolonged or more frequent and prolonged outages, my understanding.
To supplement one last question here. When I look at it, maybe I missed the numbers. How many residents took advantage of this offer that was there for in the area?
Yeah, in the end, we got 39 rebates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Watson.
Yeah, first I'll give a bit more on the BC Hydro advocacy piece. So the original engineering report, which was primarily funded by DBT and Area D funds, indicated essentially we wanted to see an engineer's professional report to say where are we at in the realm of power outages. That report came out saying, you got Weatherhead on the speakers list? Sorry. You're at a higher proportion than average. You do experience them more. And then that report also highlighted several recommendations as to what they should do about that. Everything from, it's a one line in, they don't produce power up there. So having a redundant line, producing power, more vegetative management. That was the only one BC Hydro acted on. The program, the Grid Stability Program, there was recommendations around that. There was recommendations around hull resiliency. So all the hulls have backup generators, all that's been done. So BC Hydro acted on the vegetative management piece. But to what degree? It's a very long line. There's a lot of trees. So it's not to a degree where you're never going to have a tree on the line again. They did increase, that's all we can say, is they increased their management. The biggest issue in terms of not only outages, is the length of outages, because Castle used to share a lineman that would be contracted out to the Lorda Valley. They don't do that anymore. So Village of Castle and I have actually advocated on getting linemen back in the area, because the length of outages is where we run into major problems. The last one, which was 90 hours, we also have power lines on the road that cut off Chelsea and the rest of her community. And it took 30 hours for any crews to even show up. So that's the bigger kind of next level of trying to do that, which thanks Dan, and we'll talk offline about it, he already knows about it. What I wanted to mention was a huge thanks to Lynx, the ability to describe to them and work with them what this project has been over a 6-year timeline has been incredible. The ad hoc generator program that showed up was literally a 90-hour power outage, different one. It was in November, and I called one of their board members and said, hey, if we can get generators, will Lynx manage a program that provides them ongoing? Within 2 hours, the local building supply was delivering them 5, 6.
It was 10 originally.
10, thank you. Big generators that are now available on loan, and you can sign up to be on the pre-plans. Like if you know there's a long outage, you're going to need it for your freezer or your fridge. And those are available by the community, and they hold those on trust. So that even went beyond what we expected, but I wanted to actually acknowledge Chelsea, who's been the primary person on this program the whole time, really thinking outside the box, really working with her board to understand liability and risk and all that. So, and I did just send it to our Columbia River Treaty team, because knowing that Duncan Dam is a treaty dam and there's power issues in this area remains one of the biggest advocacy pieces that this program is trying to show can be done in other areas, but also to demonstrate we've put in over $150,000 from the first engineering report to
Yeah.
the outcomes. So no question, just blabbering on about how awesome Links is.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll add a comment that Silicon Valley has been experiencing increasing frequency of outages and increasing length of outages because, again, they don't have local crews.
Yeah.
So we often have to wait for a crew from Vernon or Kelowna to come in. Just 4 or 5 days ago, we had a 12-hour outage in Silverton. Our situation is not as critical as yours is, but it's getting there. It's getting, it's getting to be worse. And the villages of New Denver and Silverton have done ongoing advocacy with BC Hydro about this issue as well. It's a combination of a combination of factors, and the problem's not going to go away.
Yeah, that's just it. That's what we were finding. The advocacy piece was taking it so far, and yet still community members, vulnerable community members are needing something like right now, especially it can become like we're identifying the power outages is actually like an emergency risk factor up there.
Yeah. Okay. Director Davidoff?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A few years ago, we asked staff to look into the ability for RDCK residents to access emergency generators. And if we could purchase, in bulk, have them available to our residents. And staff did prepare a report, which under the memo that Chair Watson sent out, I can't share because it would be during the meeting. So there is a report. If staff could please send that out, then I don't know how this would be done. Attached to what then? Like staff did a report because a few of us asked staff to look into the possibility of having emergency generators available through the RDCK. And there was a full report done on this. And that should be shared with us. Procedurally, I don't know how that's to be done. Is this something then would be the next CSLAC meeting because it has to be a public document? Can't really be shared with some of us because then it would be a public document and I can't share it here. So basically, if staff could figure out how to get that report that was completed for us.
Okay, Director Davidoff.
Thank you.
Manager Sedan has informed me that once they locate that report, it will be shared with the CSAC members.
Do you want some feedback on our experience with the generators? I could provide a little bit of experience because it hasn't exactly been a straightforward, easy process. There's an incredible amount of logistics involved in getting the generator to people, getting someone to be available in those moments, the period of time for people to come pick them up, deliver them, get them back, not to mention storing them with gasoline is a big consideration, so proper ventilation, safety issues with that. And then them not working. They're notoriously will go long periods where they're not needed, and then suddenly, the maintenance piece is a big one. We just had one of the generators in. So I think having, really high quality generators, if you're going to invest in that, is worthwhile. Less, but higher quality, and then using the high octane fuel, the high is really important. So the carburetors aren't getting plugged in. The main use that we're seeing from people in power outages are, my generator isn't started, so now I need to borrow one from the program. That's the main thing. It's not as subscribed as we had originally thought. In that first outage, all the generators went out and the need was really high, and then people kind of were getting more resilient on their own and getting their own systems and impact. So we've downsized now and have 5 generators that we're just trying to put the money towards maintaining them functional. But there's a lot of pieces, and coordination is actually pretty huge on that front.
Thanks. I have 2 more people on the speakers list, and then we're going to move on from this. Director Jackman.
Great, thanks to the chair. And so others have said thanks for this presentation. I'm looking for maybe a more whole cost picture, because $1,000 to $1,200 doesn't necessarily do the installation that some people have for. And thinking along the lines of the more vulnerable people, that some people, when you get a heavy snowfall, power lines down, there's always that kind of scurry. Does anybody know how Joe's going to be filling for Alice needs, power for medical equipment, relocate somebody. So there's 3 ways that people use generators. Usually there's the good old fashioned fired up, leave the door window cracked open, and extension cords all over the house. There's the transfer switch, which I've had installed on projects, extraordinarily expensive and invariably requires a sub panel because there's no way you're going to compete with the loads in the house. And then there's the other one where you would wire in a dedicated circuit, like you see in hospitals. Some of the outlets are red. They're completely different grid, through different source, nothing to do with the normal power, not necessarily with protections. So of the sort of 3 approaches, do you have information on what approaches people took to putting your generator in the living room and boiling yourself? What approach did people take? What were the total costs? What were the rough wiring costs if they did dedicated outlets in their house? Do you have that kind of data?
Yeah, not off the top of my head. Like you can look back at the. I don't think that was even in the budget breakdown. But for the $1,000 budget that people had, they were going with option 1. So your generator option with the extension cord. Yeah, we did have 2 people who were investing in a sub panel and did that for powering their well, because that was their priority. And we're able to do that within the budget more or less. Yeah. If that can answer your question.
Okay, so no, thanks. It's through the chair. You won't have that data then, but that would be the item that'd be nice to present to the community, that if they want something that for somebody's not highly mobile, all they have to do is fire up the generator, plug it in from the outside, and then plug it inside.
Yeah, like what's that gonna cost? We didn't have that in the initial project development phase, so I could get that information to you and that was part of managing expectations, so that people know like we can offer $1,000 just to cover the basic essential needs, like you're not gonna lose the food you store, that's really big. I feel like people are stockpiling a lot of food from their gardens or things that they bought in their deep freezes, because coming to town is a big deal. So stuff like that, medical devices and communications. And so that's what we were advocating for and targeting with the $1,000 rebate. People aren't going to get a Generac for the house or stuff like that with this program. But we found that for the critical needs, and that's what we were focusing.
I'd love to see that at some point.
Yeah, take that one offline. Thanks. So I just have one more on the speakers list, is Director Cunningham. And then we will be moving along because we have more stuff to cover. So Hans, if you want to go ahead.
Well, yes. Thank you. Yes, something a lot of people don't know is that if you are running things like generators that are only running occasionally, and also things like lawnmowers, anything off-road, you should be putting marked gas in it. Marked gas does not contain alcohol and will not jam up carburetors and things while sitting for long periods of time. And that's the biggest thing that happens. If you leave your lawnmower sitting there with old gas in it, the carburetor will be jammed up by come spring and you have to pay $50 to get it cleaned. Same thing with generators. Since I've converted to red gas for my own generators, I have no problem. They can sit for up to 2 years and they'll still start at the first pull. Just a comment, and a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, so
one last thing, if I may, Chair, and that is Mark gas, by the way, is the same price as regular gas because the road tax is not paid for it. So you can't use it in your car, but you do get, Mark gas is number one gas, premium gas, no alcohol. Just mentioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cunningham.
Great.
And,
Can I just,
Yeah.
make the one comment
Yeah.
towards it? Through the chair, which is, with once the applicants were approved, we did provide them with a CARE document that did indicate that usage for marked gas or high octane.
great, thank you so much. I really like that this is replicable in other communities. Well done, thank you very much.
And I'll just say, I'll be happy to share any of our, the application forms, all the documents that we produced, that they can be adapted to other communities. Happy to share all of that. Yeah, just let me know.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Stephanie.
And moving along, we have item 7.1, staff report for information. Did anybody have any burning questions or comments about the update? Nope. Okay, we can move along then. For information, again, the Rural Mobility Community Advisory Committee minutes that we have received just for information. And
Director Davidoff and Director Hewitt have questions.
okay. Director Davidoff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I guess my question is to staff. The Rural Mobility Community Advisory Committee, I looked it up, and one of the things that they may be working on is there's no update yet on active transportation advocacy. One of the things that absolutely destroys active transportation networks in small communities is seal coating. When they seal coat the roads and there's no sidewalk, people with mobility issues are stuck in their homes. They can't go for a walk. You can't push a stroller through it. Like, I have got impact statements from residents in one of my communities, and it is just horrible. And Highways keeps saying, oh yeah, with time, with snow cleaning and everything, the grooves and stuff are going to be fixed. Well, some of our side roads in these communities, there's hardly any plowing done in the wintertime. They're not high priority. So basically, I know I'm writing a letter to the minister right now, and I'm getting quotes on trying to build an active transportation network to address this issue right now. But is this something that, question to staff, that will be looked at? And how do we get?
Director Davidoff, I have a staff member who can respond to that.
Thank you.
That's really quick, isn't it? Go ahead,
Through the chair, I think this came up at the last CSLAC meeting.
Mhm.
And I did send an email to you, Davidoff.
Yep.
I can re-forward that email and then, open those conversations with you. I'd love to chat about that further.
Yeah, what we're doing is we're going ahead. I collected all of the impact statements and I'm preparing a letter to the minister right now that will go to our community first, so they see everything, and also getting quotes from different paving outfits to rebuild an active transportation lane, at least in the community, if Highways refuses to put proper pavement down. So we have not stopped working on this, but I'm asking if the Rural Mobility Community Advisory Committee, is this part of their function? Because it's not just my community that's dealing with this issue.
Can staff respond to that question?
Yeah, through the chair, it's totally within the purview of that active transportation project. And I'm excited to connect on that. And there's members of the group that are also interested.
Yep. So we'll connect offline, and then you'll see what we've got prepared.
Great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
because the
Thank you,
province.
Director, and thank you, staff.
Oh, thanks, Kate.
Looks like we've put the two of you together so that can move along with good staff support. Excuse me, Director Hewitt.
Thank you. And if the chair will indulge me, I wasn't quick enough getting my name in chat for the last item.
Okay,
I just wanted to say thanks, staff, for the format of the report. I prefer it's the same information, but it's easier to me. I find it easier to read without all the color in there. So thank you for that. That was it.
great. Thank you, Director Hewitt. I found it a bit easier to read and had more immediate clarity for me. So thank you to staff for doing that. We have item 7.3 that we need to refer to the board. So can I have a motion to refer it to the board? Dr. Jackman, seconded by Director Honegrath. Any discussion on that? No, I guess we don't, no discussion on the referral.
Just to note on the proprietary referral, the reason why it's moving to board is this is funded through general admin. And so we just didn't want to hold a conversation that did not include all the participants in funding this. And it also will include an appointment, which will be at the board table. So the minutes were just following that appointment.
Thank you, Director Watson. That's helpful. And that brings us to old business, item 8.1 for information, the Living Lakes final report. Does anyone have any comments or questions on that report? Does staff want to add anything to it?
I'll make it fun.
Okay, Dr. Watson.
I'm curious through to staff, and I know you're not running this program, but I do find it with the Emergency Disaster Mitigation Act coming through, and I've been privileged to be a part of that committee. The amount of work that is going to be required of us from a risk assessment perspective essentially makes this kind of information invaluable in terms of data collection and whatnot, how we might use it. What I'm curious if staff wants to comment, you don't have to, is the notion of the amount of data that we're relying on nonprofits for when it becomes core work we're required to do. I'm going to add a total wild card to that. Crown doesn't pay taxes. And that is something that when we're doing risk assessments in the Crown, that's where a lot of this stuff could be better funded and directly through the needs we might have. It's more of a political advocacy piece, but I'm just curious if staff has any feedback on how we might address that going forward.
I can speak to it through the chair, and then maybe Paris can add to it if she knows a little bit more. The reason why Living Lakes formed the Water Data Hub, it's intended to house all this citizen science in addition to provincial data, and that way it's accessible to anyone for use of whatever project they're using. So I would assume that Living Lakes, having done this project, that data would be available if ever needed for a more thorough analysis, whether it's within this community or in general through the regional district.
Sorry, that wasn't the question. And I'm not concerned about the data being available. What I'm concerned with is the amount of public funding through grants that nonprofits are relying on because the province is not keeping up with the data that we are going to be required to keep up with our authority. So my central question is, are you raising flags as staff, or do you see that flag as staff in regards to, this is great work, I'm not questioning the work, what I'm questioning is, we used to have water monitoring sites all over the place that the province managed. Nonprofits are picking up the tab on a lot of the work that has been inadvertently become essential data for us to do our work. Do you understand? Dan does. Just because I said nodding.
For pointing that out. I'm just going to say, Dan, who has been talking to you about the Emergency Disaster Mitigation Act and talked to you about a specific thing.
Thank you, the Chair. And I think it builds on what Sangeeta is talking about, because there's two parts to, in my mind, in your question. So one is the cost of risk assessments and the cost of collecting the data and maintaining the data in order to be able to understand on an ongoing basis our risks. And currently, as a result of there being a gap in how we get that data, it's landing in the hands of nonprofits or NGOs that are able to support that, or citizen science that's stepping in. One of the avenues that staff has explored is going forward with is hazard risk and vulnerability assessment for the entire region that is going to be provincially funded. So there are pockets of funding through DRIFT, which it's disaster resilience innovation investment. Thank you. That do give us a substantial amount of money to be able to do that kind of risk assessment. The question is how often for staff at this, how often do we need to be collecting that data in order to be able to understand that it's, in order to be able to trust it ultimately. So I'm, in theory, through the regulations, and we'll see, probably no more than me, that we'll get a guidance from the province to say how often we need to be reviewing our risk assessments. My hope, so the flag that I've been raising is, are we going to have matching funding that's going to make sure that we have access to the data on a consistent and reliable basis that will align with the renewal process and timeline that the province requires of us? That, to me, has yet to be seen. Right now, DRIFT funding exists, SEP funding exists. We're able to access a lot of funding to be able to do the work we need to do. If that's going to be clear and consistent and reliable ongoing, I don't know yet. But it is a concern.
Supplemental?
Yes.
So I only said Dan because he was nodding his head. I just want to apologize to you. That's why, because he was doing this. So that's why I said that. And I think essentially my question is much more about political advocacy regarding, like, Living Lakes comes to sustainability to say we need to do this work, and we say it's absolutely essential. Of course it is. My flag is, why is the province no longer funding this? Which isn't necessarily, it's not one that I thought staff could really give insight on, but I was curious, in your professional rounds, is there advocacy that we should be building on? Because water monitoring is only one component of it. There's so many other components where it's nonprofits who are doing that work, the watershed work that, or the logging work that the nonprofit watershed works are doing across the region is such critical information. The scientists, there's so much being done outside of the government that becomes essential data to what we might do, such as the disclaimer on my forestry referrals now. So it's a bit convoluted, but that's where I was going with it.
I can, yeah, through the chair, I can respond. I think any advocacy work we're doing is really going to come through this watershed governance project that we're involved in various areas. We were talking directly with provincial government, and as Dan mentioned, there's a lot of provincial grants going forward, and I know Living Lakes accesses a lot of that funding as well as federal to do some of their work. So I anticipate we are actually having those conversations, and we'll continue to have them through the WGI project. Thanks. Okay, thank you. And that was just for information. And under new business, item 9.1, again for information, CSAC interview summary. And folks will present that. Paris?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, so this report for information is provided to summarize the interviews that Sangeeta and I conducted with members of CSLAC. There was only one person that did not participate, so it's a fairly fulsome reflection of thoughts and input. The attachment provides a more comprehensive summary of how the interviews were grouped, and we are providing this as a follow-up to the request from the committee for this information. We do anticipate, because much of the discussion, or one of the three questions that was asked was regarding the financial impact of having three areas pull out of membership, and so we will be preparing a substantial financial summary of the impacts for receipt in the fall.
Thank you. Does no additional comment from Sangeeta? Do any of the directors have comment or questions on this item? No. Okay. That brings us to public time. Is there any public present?
You have observer, but I don't know.
Okay. Does the observer have any questions for us at this time?
Chair, I have a point of order after public time.
So that no public wishes to comment. Director Davidoff, what?
Yeah, I just want to make it really clear how we're supposed to share information. Because this came up, we had a really long memo on this, and I know I've shared information during meetings, as have other directors. And the key thing is that I'm sitting here right now, I've got this report, I can't send it to this committee because that's not appropriate. And the key thing is we're discussing this topic. It's work that staff has done, costing out generators, storage, where they would be stored, having a supply, everything. And the key thing is that we're not going to have a CSLAC meeting for a while. So how do we share information that is relevant to what we're discussing at a meeting? It's not secret. And it's some work staff has done. And I'm going to be watching this very carefully, because even talking about something that from your perspective, from a director's perspective, that's new information that isn't in a report format, is actually sharing new information that wasn't on the agenda. So I just want to
Okay, Director Davidoff.
Yeah, so I've got the report on my desktop right now, which I can't share with this meeting. So what do I do with it?
Director Watson, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, happy to. So there is no motion on this agenda that would be affected by information the public did not have, nor did we have time to review it. So sharing something that does not have a motion attached to it as general information is fine. Generally, you would just ask staff to do that, and staff have already said they would do it. So that's fine to do.
Okay.
The point of that memo is that when we share information on email that is not available to the public for an item that has a motion on an agenda, during that motion or during that agenda, not only is it not fair to directors to have that adequate time to review their information, but it also is inappropriate because the public doesn't have all the information that we're considering at that time. So that's your baseline, that's the kind of guidelines. And it also came from directors who have a really difficult time trying to absorb information during an item. Generally, you want to do that well in advance of a meeting so you're prepared. So I hope that helps. There's no motion on this agenda. You can just ask staff to circulate it, send it to Sangeeta, and she can give it to the...
I'll let staff circulate it. That's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you. So there was nothing arising from public time. The next Community Sustainable Living Advisory Committee meeting is scheduled for October 14th, 2025 at 1 p.m. And I would call for a motion to adjourn. Okay. Several hands went up. We are adjourned.